Hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. And for today's podcast episode, I actually have independent producer, director, writer with me, Clint Robinson. Say hello to everyone, Clint.
Hey guys, how's it going? Clint Robinson here. Like you said, director, writer, producer, actor, cinematographer, gaffer. I pretty much do every job on the set. I'm a one-man band. Not really. I can do it all, but not all at once.
I can imagine that you'll be actually wore out by the time set's actually getting ready to close, to the point where you're just crashed out on the set.
Yeah, if I tried to do everything at once, it would probably be a disaster. I stick to one or two jobs at a time. But yeah, usually it's like writer, director, or director, producer. I never act and do something else at once. That's one thing that has to have all my focus because I'm not a great actor. So
I can imagine, because even Sylvester Stallone even tried coaching the actor who played in Creed. He's like, look, I know that you want to direct and act, but take it from somebody that knows something, right? He said, kid, it's a lot harder to actually direct and act at the same time. Stick to what you know.
Oh yeah, what I tell people is get 110% at one thing before you start going over to another. When it comes to on camera and behind camera work, you know what I mean?
Right.
You wanna be 110% before you get to doing the other thing at the same time. Otherwise, it's gonna be a disaster for you mentally.
Right, exactly. Now, my question is this: how long have you actually been doing this? Being a director, producer, writer, doing cinematography. What got you into this thing? What made you say, "Hey, look, I want to direct movies. I want to make art and everything"? What was the go-to?
Okay, so a long time ago, I was 5 years old watching Empire Strikes Back on VHS. And I can't really pinpoint one specific part of that movie that made me be like, I want to do that. So I'm going to blame just that it's a really good movie, probably the best Star Wars film that was made. So, I just started getting really interested in how movies were made at that point. And by the time I was a teenager, I was watching Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction back to back. And I was just like, yep, that's what's going to happen. So my parents for Christmas got me a camcorder. I just started making horrible home videos, as is the usual for that story, just started eating through tapes, because back then we were recording on those little tiny like mini cassettes. Oh yeah. Eating through those for no reason whatsoever. And then when I entered high school, I found out that my school had a film and television productions class. So I enrolled in that, and the first year of that class was basically just weeding out the people that wanted to be in it. And it was teaching people like how red, green, blue works, how broadcasting started, what radio broadcasting is, the evolution of the television, all that technical stuff that people think is just ridiculous and unnecessary information. And somehow I even found that interesting. I got a C minus, which was actually like one of the higher grades in the class. And as long as you pass that class, he lets you go into television and film productions too, which is when you started to get to make, like, this is back when YouTube was becoming a thing. So basically like those little tiny like 3-minute sketches. Basically what me and my friends did was just like make school appropriate SNL skits. And then it was also like part of the school's closed circuit broadcasting network. So we also did like some news stuff for the school news channel, just stupid stuff like what's for lunch today, what's the drama club up to, this, that, and the other. But you know what I mean? We got to play with a bunch of cool stuff. And then come senior year, by that point, the teacher, Mr. Boughton, Brian Boughton, he'd become like my mentor, almost like an uncle.
Cool.
Basically, I came to him and I was like, I really want to make a movie. And he's like, all right, let's make a film club. And we made a film club for the school just because I wanted to make a movie. And he walked me through screenwriting. He walked me through casting, walked me through pre-production, production, post-production, just like through the whole thing. And at the end of it, he was like, so you still want to do film? And I was like, oh yeah, I love this. And then I graduated and I followed everybody's advice and got an adult job. 10 years later, COVID-19 hits, and I'm just like, well, I'm bored. I guess I want to write. So I started writing the novel. And then I was like, got like 10 chapters in, and it was just boring, and I couldn't stick with it. And I was like, I'm going to write a script while I'm just like, got writer's block going on here. Um, Wrote a script, edited the script, proofed the script, got somebody to look at it, and they're like, "It's actually a really good script. You should make this." And I was like, "Okay." So I did a open casting call, got people to come in and audition. And I was like, "Well, I guess since they auditioned, I'll make a movie." And here I am, 5 movies later, about to do my first feature length film. Um, and I'm one of the better known Central Illinois filmmakers. All just because I was bored one day. Honestly, it wasn't that. I was gonna do it anyways. It's just COVID kind of just like forced my hand because I was just like, I
Oh,
can't go out and hang out with people. My job was work from home at the time. So I was just like, all right, cool. Might as well just write this while I'm sitting here. Um, but yeah, there was a long gap period. So I guess technically I've been doing this for like 12 years, but
oh, wow! Congratulations.
realistically, realistically, I've been doing it like maybe cumulatively, maybe like 2 years, just
Okay,
because of that gap, that
right, I
long,
got
long gap.
it. Right. And another thing though too is I know that you're working on a film, and what is the name of the film? What is it about? I'm curious about this because of the fact that on the poster, I really like the dark apocalyptic background. I like the smoke. It feels like a Mad Max kind of vibe to it in a sense. But
Right.
I know when
I'll walk you through it. So it's called ParaGenex Shadow of the Mind. And originally it was just going to be Shadow of the Mind, but I met another filmmaker, Darrell Miller, out of Indianapolis, and he has a brand already established. It's called ParaGenex. And it kind of just
mm,
meshes well with what I'm doing. So what we did is we kind of combined. He's got his YouTube series that he's going to be doing. He's going to do just like, basically like the TV series format. And what
okay,
I'm doing over here in Illinois, because our characters aren't going to interact, our story's not going to interact, like loosely,
okay.
kind of like how Marvel does sometimes, where some of their characters loosely interact, but not completely. Maybe one character jumps over for an episode or something of that nature, but no like
Like a little tip of
Avengers
the
level.
like right.
Yeah.
Like a little tip of
Yeah.
the hat kind of thing, not
Yeah.
enough to
Yeah.
actually force anything in.
Acknowledgement, but not like full on interaction. And so like my stuff's sticking to Illinois, his stuff's sticking to Indiana type of deal. But what it is, and this is what's a log line, which is basically my elevator pitch of the movie. If I'm stuck in an elevator with you for 30 seconds, this is what I would tell you and see if it piques your interest. Tobias Williams, a man struggling with mental illness and addiction, finds himself thrust into a world of darkness and intrigue that causes him to not only question his own morals, but his own reality.
Oh wow.
Um, I think I
I
piqued
love
your
that.
interest there.
Yeah. When you
um,
said you just saw how big my eyes got with the reaction that I gave you, especially when
yeah.
you said mental illness and then some of the other stuff that I mean, I'm like, okay, I'm glued in. So
So it's not full on. That's more like that's the shadow of the mind. What that poster is, that's like how he views the world around him is this dark, desolate void. You know what I mean? So the poster itself
right.
is a metaphor.
Okay.
Um, but basically, it's so many different genres. How do I put it? It's like
Mm,
a suspense thriller mixed with dark fantasy mixed with drama. Because at the end of the day, even though there is some of this other possibly otherworldly stuff going on because this guy's struggling with mental illness, so we don't have 100% um an idea of what's happening is 100% real or not.
okay.
But we also have underneath this a once successful businessman that has become disgraced almost because of mental illness and addiction. And his struggle with that, his struggle with once being top dog in a small town to being like basically the vagrant people spit on. and his dealings with how all of his loved ones have abandoned him besides one person, and how their views of him are, and things of that nature. So the story, even though it has these fantastical or plausibly fantastical elements to them, it's more about the story of family, of mental illness and addiction, of how human relationships are complicated, and they're not always I love you or I hate you, but there's multiple sides to that, and everybody has a story within each other's story.
Right. I like that though, to be honest with you. Now, let me ask you this. You said we don't know what his reality actually is. So does that mean he's actually painting in his head what his reality would actually look like? Or is it reality as we look at it, but he looks at it at a different lens?
So at points of the film, we're seeing most of the film, we're seeing what's actually happening. But there's
Okay.
points of the film that I've purposely left it ambiguous,
Mm,
to where you're not sure if what's happening is actually happening, or if it's up to Toby, or if possibly it's a 50-50 scenario. And I did that kind of to play with the audience, but also to show that sometimes people with mental health aren't completely wrong in what they're seeing. It's just partially correct or
mm.
partially incorrect.
Right. It's just looking at the eyes are through a different lens, if you will.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
everything.
He has a different focal point.
Right. Exactly. And I actually like that point, though. I think that this is actually going to be an interesting film. I cannot wait to actually see this and everything in its full detail and everything. I bet that the character is very complex, has a lot of layers to the character as well, since you're actually dealing with all that stuff combined, which is something that I would actually, if you told me that it was actually streaming on Amazon right now, I would definitely go on ahead and watch it on Amazon right now. But,
Oh, for
it just
sure.
makes me excited. Another thing though too that I actually want to do, I want to actually teach some people from behind the scenes stuff and things like that. Because here's the thing, I might actually have some people that are part of the film community where they are actually getting into film school. I might actually have some people that are wanting to learn some behind the scenes stuff. So my question is this: like, explain what post production is. Of course, production means that it's already set in stone that there is film being produced, right? Or is that
Um, okay,
something different?
so I'll explain, like, in context of this film in particular, just because this is what I'm most hands on with right now, because
Okay.
it's a feature length film, which means it runs longer than 75 minutes. It's going to be an hour and 40 minutes,
Okay.
give or take. So pre production basically means from the moment you have the idea until the moment you hit the set. So
Okay.
that means you have the idea. I'll go from how I do it. You have the idea, you sit for 4 or 5 months and think, is it actually a good idea? You you write it down, you start the script, you walk away, you come back eventually, and you're like, all right, I'll nail this out. But so you have the idea, you do your plot summary, your outline, basically do your character write outs, which is just like Tobias Williams, disgraced businessman, um, diagnosed schizophrenic, alcoholic, and pill addiction.
Mm,
And then you go from there, you write out other parts that I'm not going to say because of spoilers about the
right.
character, but more stuff that goes into detail of him. And then what I do is then I start relations, Sam, only support system, Jacob, estranged brother, Lawrence, abusive father, Margaret, comatose mother, stuff like that. That
Okay.
you write out who they're related to and how they're related to each character throughout the rest of the script, and then you go through and you start writing each character, their description, and their relations. And then once you get that, you should then go into start to writing the script, because at that point you have a story and character development with just those characters and their relations. So at that point, you're basically just tying in what characters are doing where and when. And then what I do is I write the script, I proofread it myself, and then I send it to somebody else to proofread, because you're going to be 100% attached to the script no matter what. So you're not going to want to edit. you're going to want to keep it how it is. And you
Right.
need somebody, not just a friend or a family member, you need somebody you can trust to be as brutally honest as possible. Because that's what I do. Courtney Rainier and Nick Kafkas. They're two people I work with on a lot of films. Nick Kafkas is actually the guy that's going to be starring as Toby. Courtney Rainier is my wardrobe department.
Okay.
They tell me brutally, they'll be like, hey man, this entire scene's worthless, why is it there? Or like with this movie, they were like, the first 90% is great, the ending was rushed, so I had to go back and fix the ending to make it, not rushed.
Right.
And I did that with their help, and it's now what we think it can probably enter Sundance once it's made. Obviously right now this is all just theory.
Right.
So once you get that script, you go into casting, and that's still in pre-production, and you just find the best fit for each character. And then once you have casting done, build your crew. So you need, your director, assistant director. It just all depends on the size of this. With this, I have a 20-person crew because it's a feature
Right.
film. It's got a big production. And then after that, you get everybody to sign the non-disclosure agreements, figure out your contracts, everybody's day rate, and then build a shot list, which is, we're going to shoot all the bar scenes on this day. These are the people that need to be present. And then you figure out how many days you're going to have. Like on this film, we're going to have 8 shoot days. So at that point, I found out how many days we have, how much every person costs, and what days everybody's going to be there. So at that point, I can build a budget for my cast and crew, which I think with this film came out to $30,000. Roughly, I'm not going to get into specifics, but roughly about that. And then you do a script breakdown and figure out your props, special effects, wardrobes, location prices, location scouting. Right. And then once you have that, you'll have your full-on budget, which I made public knowledge that the budget for this film is basically $85,000, give or take. I never give exact amounts. And that's basically pre-production in a nutshell. And then, you go through script read-throughs and stuff like that. You build the wardrobe, you get the props, you do a bunch of different stuff like that. And then the day you hit set is production. Production is the shortest time in film. Because, like with this, it's only 8 days. This project is 1.5 years long. Only 8 days of that is production time.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
And post-production is everything after the set is broke down. So editing, sound design, original soundtrack, scoring, marketing, distribution, festival runs, everything up until it launches. Everything up until it's commercially available is post-production. And that all just depends. Like this, I'm going to run through some film festivals to see if I can't garner any money for extra marketing and distribution before I get it distributed.
Right, and people don't realize that, though. Doing something small like that, even though it's like maybe a $30,000 movie or $80,000 movie, it's a lot like fishing. You actually have to hope that somebody will actually pick this up to where you can actually get more funding for this movie. They only see a small portion. They don't see the bigger lens to everything either. It's like, okay, just give me my movie. That's all I want. That's all I care about. But there's a lot more to it in that context of just give me my movie. And there's production costs. There's everything to go with it. You have to pay your crew people. You actually have to pay the PR person. You have to pay everybody to actually make everything.
Hotels, travel, food, all that fun stuff. You have to find somebody that wants to distribute your movie and who they partner with and their percentages they take and royalty fees and stuff like that. There's a lot of business, and usually the director doesn't do that, but since I'm a director producer, I take on pretty much like 70% of the stress of a project. But that's just because I like that. I like doing that, and I want to learn that. So this project is the biggest project most of us has been on. I mean, Nick Kafkas, the star, Toby, the guy who's playing Toby, he's been in Fargo, but he was a background character. Like a recurring background character. He was in the latest season for 3 episodes. Courtney Rainier, my wardrobe and makeup department head, she worked on House of Cards season 5 and the It remake. So like, and I myself, I've worked on History Channel for Forged in Fire. I told you that last week because I was supposed to be on
Right.
here. But yeah, so like, so we all have quote unquote done big things, but we're still indie.
Right.
Um,
And that's something too that I want to mention. Just because you see certain people in movies in a big budget film like it or into different TV shows, it does not mean that they made it big. It just means that they acknowledge that they're talent and that's it. You don't actually
yeah,
see millions of dollars or anything like that like you actually think because it's always about trying to get to the next job. It's always about try
yeah.
as long as you keep on trying, that's all you can do in this business. Each day that you wake up and you do something, you're that much closer to that goal. But you have to do
Oh
the
yeah.
job first before you
Only like
get to that goal.
1% of the people in the industry make that $1 million paycheck.
Right,
I'm doing this full time, so I'm technically like what I consider a success. You know what I mean?
right,
But I don't know if I'll ever be household name. I've never wanted that. I just want to
right,
make my stuff.
right.
Like if my stuff ends up on Netflix, great. I just don't want it to be on like the Netflix like homepage. Just
Right,
because at that
exactly.
point people know who I am, and I don't want that. I know all the people that work with me want that, so dear God, I'm probably gonna have to reach that goal.
So they'll be
Just
like,
for
it's
them.
so real, right?
Yeah. I'll have to reach that just for them. There you go, guys. I love you.
But yeah, I totally understand.
But yeah, it's the process of the film. Most of it is not in production, even at Hollywood level stuff. Like I think Avengers Infinity War was like a 5 year thing, and only like
Yep.
6 months of that was on set. Um, so it's people think that most of it's like you get a script, you go shoot, and then it gets sent
No,
out. And geez, no,
no.
like
There's
you start
rewrite.
getting,
Right,
I've there's rewrites, there's reshoots. I haven't had to do a reshoot yet, thank God. A project I've assisted directed has to do reshoots, but nothing that's like been directed by me. Now, this being a feature film coming up, there's going to be reshoots. It's
it's
once you get
inevitable.
into like 8 days of filming, it's inevitable. Like a memory card's going to get corrupted, or batteries are going to die in a film camera, or we're going to end up having a boom mic in an important shot that otherwise was like a perfect take. Like it's gonna happen. So I built that into the budget in my miscellaneous fund, which I recommend everybody that if you don't do that, have a miscellaneous fund that is 10% of your budget, just in case.
And
I know it sounds like a lot. So really, the budget for this film is more like 75,000, but 10,000 of it is miscellaneous. If that doesn't get
right.
used, it just gets rolled over into um, my company's checking account to get used for later projects. It's not like I pocket that $10,000.
Right.
It's just going to be
Exactly.
used on a future project. That way, I don't have to
Or
raise like whatever or use to cover marketing or distribution deals for this current project. Like it's just going to be used at one way or another. And I recommend that, anyways. Like always have extra money in your company's accounts just so that you
right.
can do something. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a great project. I haven't really released a lot of information about it. We're going to have an original soundtrack. All of that being Illinois-based musicians. Since this film's
Nice.
being made in Illinois, we're all doing Illinois independent musicians. We already have 2 songs finished. There's going to be, I think, 15 songs on the soundtrack. So it's going to be really cool. Obviously, you're not going to hear all 15 songs, like all 6 minutes of each song in the film. It'll probably be
Right.
like 30-second snippets here and there. But what we're doing is all the major characters have a theme song, and then there's like 5 plot points that have a theme song as well. So
Nice.
I kind of took inspiration from like John Williams with Star Wars, where each
Okay.
character has their theme song, but instead of it being an original like orchestral thing, it's like rap, R&B, indie rock. I think we have some death metal,
Oh, nice.
some EDM. I don't think we have country just because there's not a character that has a country feel,
Right.
but it's really awesome. Casper Alexander, aka Chai Songwriter, is my soundtrack coordinator, and he's built an amazing team. I'm
That's
excited
pretty cool
for it.
though. Because here's the thing, too. Like I actually interviewed Telman Brock and everything. He's an independent director as well, and he actually had theme songs for every single person that he created as well for his
Hmm.
universe that he made. And to me, I love whenever when directors do that because it's our introduction to that character for the very first time,
Yeah.
and we actually need to actually have a feel for him, and that music actually amplifies that character and who he
Oh
is and
yeah.
represents who he is for the first time. Because if you don't have that certain key element, it can be thrown off the very first set if you don't have that right
Oh,
music or anything.
oh, exactly. It's kind of reminiscent of Darth Vader and the Imperial March. You can't think of one without the other. Um, from Star Wars, you know, the dun 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 dun
Yep.
dun, dun. Like his walking, and you hear that music, you instantly get that feeling of dread for that character. And I
Right.
feel it's important with this film because each character kind of embodies a negative personality trait almost. And like this goes into like I almost like have a psychological like dissertation written for each of these characters and why they represent a certain thing. It's like almost I don't have it at hand. I think I left it in my suitcase. um but it's
Yes.
like 90 page, it's almost as long as a script, just breaking down why each character represents a certain thing and who they are and their personality levels, because the plan for this is to not just be a standalone film. It can be viewed as a standalone film perfectly, but it's planned to have 4 sequels, and I'd love to do a prequel just because there's some questions that don't get answered right away. But so I have to, as a writer, understand these characters down to like their core motivations, their core beliefs, and the reasonings behind each of these, which that's almost just me in a nutshell, anyways. I would do that for fun, even if it's just a 15-minute short. But it's also like I kind of am like a pessimist almost. I'm like, what if I die and this never gets finished? So I like almost have
Right.
an instruction book ready for somebody to pick it up and finish it for me. Like I almost have a roadmap. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Do it.
So basically, you
uh,
have a lightsaber ready for somebody
I'm
to
ready to
handle for
pass
you.
it. I'm ready to pass along the lightsaber. Yep. That's what I'm doing
I got
here.
that's perfect. You know,
Yep.
but yeah,
Passing the
man.
baton.
That's pretty cool though, because I'm actually the same way though too. To be honest with you, it's like, okay, who's gonna do what I do after I'm done, or
Exactly.
if this script doesn't get done that I'm working on, whatever, who's gonna take up the reins? Who's gonna treat her with the same
Exactly.
respect that I do, and everything. So I actually have that in my head as well. I think every artist actually has that in their heads as
It's
well.
probably built in because like this series is become almost like it's almost like my love letter to film. And it sounds like a negative love letter, and it probably is. It's almost like an I love you but, because my issue with a lot of modern films is a lot of it is two-dimensional.
Yep, I agree.
Um and a lot of characters are flat, stereotypical,
Hmm.
atypical characters. Like we can get into the Avengers where every character has one personality trait and that's them.
Yep.
Like Quill is sarcastic, that's it. Captain
Hmm.
America is a patriot, that's all he is. And then with this film, it's almost like all of these characters, you can't predict them because they're human, and humans
Right.
aren't predictable. It's not like I wrote them to be unpredictable. I wrote them to be human, which is to be unpredictable. Um,
And to feel some type of
because
emotion and
yeah,
everything
and
too.
the characters, some of the times you're like, why the hell did they do that? And then you watch it again, or in this case, read it again, and you're like, oh, because of this thing that happened earlier that day that just triggered them to act this way. That type of thing. Like
Right.
it's
It's like a
I
falling down situation and
yeah,
everything in a sense.
it's this is why I like Quentin Tarantino. There's a lot of
Hmm.
things I don't like about his films nowadays just because of Hollywoodizing him in some ways,
Hmm.
but he writes characters and he writes good dialogue, and that's what inspired me with Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction a long time ago.
Hmm.
You can't see Quentin Tarantino inspiration in my work because I'm me. I'm not a Quentin Tarantino clone. Which that's just me knocking at a lot of independent filmmakers that say they're inspired by Quentin Tarantino and they just made like Pulp Fiction 2 or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's all. That's what they think inspiration means. But what I'm trying to do with this is show that you can write great characters, have a great story, and have a great message all at the same time. It can be entertaining and it can be fun. Now, my work, I've been told, is emotionally draining at times because it's once it gets going, it doesn't stop until the end. But I think that's what people want in their films. You don't need a lull. You want entertainment, you want enjoyability, but you also want, and what I like to put in there is an education about something. You're going to take something away from it. Even if you don't take away a new awareness for mental health, you might take an awareness that maybe you might be like this one character in a way. Which, by the way, the heroes, the villains, because, you know, protagonists, antagonists, it's almost, you can root for all of them in some ways, even the bad guys. You know what I mean? Because they're human.
Exactly. And they have to feel some type of emotion level or whatever. Otherwise, it just feels like very bland, like they just got out of bed and just said a few lines and then went back to sleep again.
Yeah. And a lot
I have to agree with you on something real quick. Is the fact that everything does feel like it's very generic. I mean, where it's like they're just reciting lines. There's no layers to the character or anything like that. And I'm like, come on, give us something, because we got better we have better TV shows now than we ever got before, where we actually have those layers to those characters where they can actually be fleshed out. Come on, don't treat us like idiots. Give us something that we can actually chew on. Give us something to actually digest. You know, so I definitely agree with you on that.
That's really just the Hollywood way. For cinema nowadays, is they have like all these like rules or guidelines or whatever. You can't do this, don't do this, don't do this. The audience is an idiot, is what they're saying. Whereas like, sorry, I had some gas there. One of I will die on the hill that this show is perfect. Dark. The German show Dark on Netflix. Perfect. If you want to see a perfect show, watch this. Don't watch it with the English voiceovers. Watch it with the German voice with the subtitles. You're not a monster. Watch that. Watch The Haunting of Hill House, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Like, these are perfect bits of cinema. And I honestly feel like good storytelling is in long form storytelling nowadays. It's just ParaGenex Shadow of the Mind is something that should be seen in a feature-length film format. I have stuff I'm working on that I want to be long form, you know, series formatted storytelling, but that's gonna be a while. Just because that's something that if I can't make it the way I want to make it, I will turn down whatever deals. So it's gonna, I want my stuff to be made a certain way.
Right.
And that's why some people might not fund it, because I won't hand over creative control. I won't. It's just
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. It's like, this is my art. You take it as is and take me with it, or you do without me.
Now I might write. I might write something that could be called like a sellout piece or something. Just be like, yeah, take it, whatever. But that's something down the line. What I'm working on now is
but something as big as what you're working on, I wouldn't want to have creative control. Here's the thing: if I was a studio and they said, "Hey, look, I want to go on ahead and buy your stuff, but you're not going to have." But here's the thing: you're not coming with it. I was like, "No, I'm sorry, but I am what I am."
This project and pretty much every project I have coming up, I'm keeping creative control. There might be one or two that I'm like, I might surrender partial creative control, but that's about as far as I'll go. And that's more just because like that could be something that could get me recognized to get funded for these bigger things. And that's more the business aspect. Like I said, I think a lot on the business side of things. So sometimes you got to sacrifice a little bit.
Exactly.
But not with certain projects, not with like this project in particular I've been working on since October. So that doesn't sound like a long time, but that's like 5 months almost, and it's not even in production yet.
But still, though, I mean, you have to think of it like this, though. You want your script to be perfect. You want everything to actually be smooth on the pages, so that way it's easily fleshed out for the actor reciting the lines and actually making it believable for that actor or actress, or else it's just going to fall to pieces. And you have to go through several rewrites or something to where, it's actually perfect. Because I know one thing, when I was working on my very first draft or whatever, I'm like, I kind of went on ahead and went a little too fast with this. I think I need to go on ahead and rewrite this out. So it could take a while
Exactly.
for
That's
you know.
exactly. It can take a while. You want to make sure whatever you put out there under your name is the best product, because that represents you as a creator.
Definitely.
And you're a brand, and you want to represent your brand as much as you can. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't think
Definitely.
about that either. Once you get into this industry, you are the product as much as the product is you, you know.
Exactly. Because they want everything to be centered around you. They want to invest in you. So the next
Mm-hmm.
thing you know, you become the machine, basically.
To an
In a
extent,
sense.
like,
Yeah.
like when it comes to stuff like social media, you should like watch what you do or say and stuff like that at times, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's more like how you represent yourself when you're pitching, or like your
Right.
professionalism, or like they'll grade your script, you know what I mean? Like you want to make
Right.
sure that it's worded the best way it can, formatted the best way it can, it's up to industry standards.
Now my question is this: how much, like, how many pages is an actual script in itself, like for a future length film?
Like I said, 75 minutes is standard for feature length. That
Right.
means about 75 pages.
About
Each
75.
script, yeah, each script page is about 50 minutes of time, of film
Okay.
length. So that's why I say about 75. It'd be more like 80, because 50 minutes doesn't correlate to a full minute. I mean,
True.
50 seconds doesn't correlate to a full minute. But like this project, ParaGenex Shadow of the Mind is 100 pages long. So that's why I said it's going to be about 140, give or take, because
Okay.
dialogue moves faster than action. Or is it vice versa?
Okay.
One of those moves faster than the other. Um, and plus, depending on the pacing of the dialogue or the pacing of the action, there's some tricks I know to lengthen scenes out. Like the scene might only be a minute long, but I can make it into 2 minutes. Um, just based off of camera angles and stuff like that. So it really just depends on like what you're wanting out of the film itself. Like I've had
Okay.
35-page long scripts turn into 55 minutes. But general rule of thumb, 1 minute per one page.
Okay.
Um,
That's something I was actually
so
kind of curious about. So,
yeah, absolutely. So if you want feature length, just get about 75 pages.
okay. And another thing, though, too, I was actually going to ask you about was this: when it comes down to deciding on the camera angles that you want and everything, how do you go about choosing the best camera angle um for everything?
So typically, what you want to do is you'll have three standard shots that you'll do. We'll say there's two people in the scene. We'll have three standard shots. We'll do the wide angle shot that shows both characters facing each other, and then you'll do a close up of character A and then a close up of character B, and that's your standard typical scene. Now, when you're
Okay.
having multiple like 7 characters in there, you have to start deciding, do all 7 of them get a close up for the entire scene, or is it more like you're going to get the establishing shot, wide angle shot, and then the close ups of the two primary or the three primary characters in that interaction, and then just reactionary shots from the rest of them. So it could only be like two dialogue lines, one dialogue line type of thing. Now that's if it's a dialogue heavy scene. If it's an action scene, you want to have your camera focused on the predominantly important action that's happening. So in a fight
Right.
scene, you don't want, and the two main characters are in a fight with each other and there's a bunch of background characters fighting each other. You want
Right.
to predominantly focus on those two main characters that are interacting, but you do want to involve what's going on behind them. So you might have
So,
like establishing wide angle shot showing everybody, then close up of the two people, and then depending, usually you focus on the person that's got the upper hand in the situation, plus reactions to the person that's in the lower hand position as well.
okay. That's something I was
Um,
curious about.
a good way to think to just learn camera angles is, and this sucks, is to watch stuff not for enjoyment but taking notes and looking at what they're
Right.
doing. Like watch stuff you've seen a million times, like watch Braveheart, or watch, yeah, like Star Wars Episode 4 or something, something that you've most
Right.
likely seen a bunch, so you don't have to worry about the story and you can focus on what they did and why they did it.
Right. Exactly. That's something I actually pay attention to as a film reviewer, though, too, is like the camera angles and everything of how the characters are actually facing. I look at just about everything and analyze just about everything on the film my very first time watching a
Yeah.
film
What
because
I
I'm just
do
that
is
impressed.
I'll watch the first time for enjoyment and then immediately watch again if I'm doing a review. Um, Unless it's like, an independent film that I'll just watch and review at the same time. I don't like a lot of independent films just because a lot of them are people that aren't, they're the pretentious filmmakers that I talked about earlier. I don't like that are just clones of famous directors and they're not good at it. You know,
Right. I got
um,
you.
that's not to
But
throw shade. It's just, there's
right.
some great ones out there that I've watched that I'm mind blown that they were able to make it with like $10,000. And I'm just like, how the
Right.
hell did you do this?
Right. I'll tell you what
But
though, if you're get this, I actually interviewed two kids with no budget at all or anything like that. And they're like, you know what, we want to make a movie. So they made a movie called Concrete Jungle. And it was just them filming what they knew out in their neighborhood. They filmed in their dad's comic book shop a little bit. They used independent local bands for one of their background music and stuff like that too. And it was like a 40-minute long video movie, and it took me back to my high school days, I'll tell you that. But it was actually
that's
pretty
awesome.
cool about how they did it.
That's awesome. I'd recommend like this is a sci-fi one. It's called The Submerged Universe by Demetrius Witherspoon. A lot
Okay.
of good short films in there. I think they're coming out with their first feature, Submerged Blue Star, coming
Okay.
out soon.
And I'll also recommend something else though too for you. Crichton Hobbs actually has a documentary out that he just made called How Many Chances?
Mhm.
And that documentary is really good. It's actually on Amazon Prime right now. And
Okay.
it's just and it's about his life, about him suffering with diabetes, with him getting into 10 car accidents, surviving that, and yeah, he's been through it all, including
Jesus.
some other stuff. And Sinbad, the comedian, even was telling people about it. So I recommend that. Oh, speaking of Crichton, hey buddy.
Well, that's awesome. I'll definitely watch it.
Yeah,
That's amazing. But yeah, that's awesome. What were we talking about? Okay.
yeah.
Um,
We were talking about the camera angles and when we were
oh
reviewing
yeah,
it for the.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I. That's how I've learned a lot about camera angles. I never went to film school,
Okay.
so I don't recommend film school. I say this all the time. At this point, it's an outdated, archaic system for people that just want to take your money. You can learn more about film by doing it than you can from film school. I have people that come on my sets that went to film school and they're
Oh,
just about as lost as somebody that didn't. Um, and like, that's not to like be mean towards them. Like, I help them a lot and feel bad because they got into debt for something and all they learned is like the meaning behind Rosebud in Citizen Kane. You know what I mean? Like just
right.
stuff like that. And like they learned the 180 rule, which is like something you learn the second you step on set and try to mess with the cinematographer. Um, but other than that, they don't learn much. They learn how to format a script, but you don't need to know how to format a script anymore. You just download a script formatting software and you're done.
Right.
Um, but yeah, like you'll learn more on your first film set as a director than you ever will in film school, and it will all
And to
be
me,
what not to do.
exactly. And to be honest with you, hands-on is probably the best way to go about it than reading something out of a book or learning something from a teacher, being in a classroom and things like that too, because I'm a big hands-on kind of person. This is what Crichton said. He said,
Yeah,
"Me either. I didn't go to film
exactly.
school either."
And neither did Alfred Hitchcock. Yeah, Quentin Tarantino was a dropout. I think the only famous directors I know of that went are Ron Howard, George Lucas, and Steven Spielberg. Those are the ones I know of for sure. Kevin Smith never finished,
Nope.
or he never went. I also know he committed credit fraud to create Clerks. So if that didn't work out, he was going to go to prison.
Oh, I didn't know about that part. I just knew about him selling his comic book collection to try
Yeah.
and make the profit work and everything. I
Yep.
didn't know about that, so I learned something new
Yeah.
just now. So,
Yep.
like,
But yeah, it's something that you don't need to do. It's like it's going to school for art. You don't need to go to school to paint. Like I guess if you really want to know certain techniques and you can't get them down on your own, go. But it's like creative writing. I why?
right,
Like unless you plan on being a professor, but I don't get it. It's just one of those money machines. That's what film school
right.
is. You're just funding that school. That's it.
Another thing, though, too, you get is like, I'm an actor. You have the snobby nose people that
I
come
went to
in.
Juilliard, and it's like, oh
Right.
boy, you went to
Here we
school.
go.
I don't want to talk bad about it because one of my
Right,
best actresses
right.
is
I can
going to
understand.
school for acting right now, but she's learning. I guess it's useful if you've never acted before,
True. It's
because
only a
she's
benefit.
learning certain acting techniques, but I can guarantee you she's learned more on my sets than she has for school.
Right, because you're limited in the classroom on what you can learn and
Yeah.
everything. Because you're not faced with several other people. You're only involved in your peers and your teacher, and that's it. You're not involved in the big, huge, I'm not, well, the spotlight, if you will, with independent projects and everything. She's not on the set to actually see the bigger picture or anything. She only sees a smaller picture than
Oh yeah.
what the teacher's actually painting her and
Oh yeah.
everything.
And I mean,
But it does have the right,
I'm not saying don't go. Like if you're really
right,
gung ho and want to go, go.
yeah,
Like I did my first semester and I got like a 100% in all my classes during that first semester. But I looked at the like syllabus for the next 3.5 years and I probably was ahead by 3 years. I wouldn't have learned anything until the end of the fourth year, which by the time we got there, I probably would have learned. I would have probably already known everything. Um, so yeah,
okay. But
um,
yeah,
but
also,
you said you
right.
had a bunch of questions for me.
Yeah, I did. Like, okay, for another thing though, too, because
Oh,
here's the
look,
thing. I'm enjoying the
film
stories.
festivals. You wanted to talk about film festivals too.
Yep. So,
um, audience question. So
okay,
my thoughts on film festivals. I think that they have their place, they have their purpose. I'm doing them, but I don't think it's necessary. It's an easy way to get if you get accepted, which by the way, they're a racket. 5% of films get accepted into film festivals. You have to pay to get into them. If you don't get into the festival, because there's an acceptance period, it's almost like an interview or an application. Um, so you pay your $50, you submit your thing, you wait for 3 months, you find out you got in. Cool. That doesn't mean anything. That just means you're an official selection for the film festival. Now you wait 3 more months, find out that you didn't win anything, but they're like, hey, people saw your movie. Great. if you do win stuff, that's cool, but there's so many film festivals out there. People really don't care unless it's Tribeca, Rain Dance, Sundance, or like Chicago
Right.
International Film Festival, Los Angeles International, international big time thing. But the cool thing about them and why I do them is if your thing gets accepted, you create buzz already. People are watching your project that wouldn't have watched it before. People are going to
Right.
go and talk about it. People are going to let people know because people that watch film festivals are big movie crunchers and like to watch things. So they'll talk about it, good or bad. There's no such thing as bad press because if they're talking about you, people are going to watch it.
Exactly.
Second, if you win stuff, that's just another award to put onto your resume, to put onto that movie's resume. Third, a lot of distributors and producers, networks, big names, investors, they view films in film festivals. So that's almost instead of doing a private pitching, you're having them, they're sitting in that theater already, they're watching your thing. And if they like it, they'll get in contact with you because of all of your information is public when you're in that festival
Right.
to anybody viewing it. So it's good for that purpose. I think a lot of how festivals are run is like scammy because why did I just pay you $50 and I don't even get like $20 back? I'm a
True.
struggling filmmaker. I just spent literally 2 weeks ago $600 on film festival applications. Now, I got into two of them so far, but one of them only cost me $5.
That's a plus.
So I got into another one that was $50. So that one I'm happy about. The $5 one, I was
Right.
like, I kind of just added you in there to round it up. Um,
Right. But
but
yeah, I
I
right,
I
right,
think I think they have a place. I also think nowadays you can go through non-traditional distributing, you can go through traditional distributing. You have a lot more avenues than just production house or festival circuit. You just need to be the judge of your own thing, like the judge of your own product. You need to be able to sit back and say this thing's crap and isn't going to win and just go ahead and get it on YouTube and Amazon Prime.
right,
Um, if you think it can win, submit it. If you think it can win Sundance, submit that shit.
right,
Um, you just have to be like myself. I knew what this film was capable of. So I submitted it to the contest I knew it was capable of because that's what a festival is a contest.
right.
This next short one that is going to be finished February 12th. This one I'm going to submit to a lot more festivals than the one I just did because I think it's capable of a lot more than what my last one is. And Shadow of the Mind, even though it hasn't been produced yet, this thing's going to Sundance.
Oh, nice.
For sure. I don't care. It's going and it's going to get in. How I'm going to do that though is first I'm going to take it to a couple smaller places, win those, and then take it to Sundance just because I can be like, hey, it won Chicago International, it won New York Regional,
Yeah.
whatever.
My question is this too. Is North by Northwest the biggest one, or is Sundance still the biggest one that you can actually go by? Because I know North by Northwest is actually pretty good too, but Sundance is like
Yeah,
the
Sundance, Tribeca, North by Northwest, Rain Dance, those ones are going to always be the biggest, just because they have like you can say Sundance, and people know what that is that aren't even in the industry. You know what I
right, right,
mean?
right.
It's
Exactly.
just like Hollywood. Hollywood isn't even the place where most of the movies are made anymore. They're made in more like
Right.
Toronto, Chicago, and Atlanta.
New
But
Orleans. Yeah.
yeah, but they're Hollywood. So it's
Right.
always going to be Hollywood. People are like, I'm going to move out to LA and work. And I'm like, well, Chicago's 3 hours away from you. Just go there. You can get on Empire, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire. Like, you can get
Right.
on a bunch of other things. You don't have to go out there. Go down to Atlanta and get on Walking Dead. I don't know. Like, why are you going to LA? Everybody goes to
Right.
LA. So basic.
I think it's also because it's like, okay, I can probably try and work as a waiter or a waitress, and maybe there might be a chance that I might actually see somebody that can actually give me a shot. But even then, that's
you
like
have a
a
better
zero. That's a long shot.
you have a better shot in Atlanta or in Chicago or New York or Toronto.
Right.
Um, those places. But yeah, festivals have a place. I I think they're dying. COVID kind of saved them at this point, because there's more out there. But I think I think it's not your main shot anymore. Um, Definitely worth it
Especially when you
though.
look at right. Because look at all the
I
possibilities with YouTube, everything else,
yeah,
and then Amazon. Yep.
I'm a traditional person just because that's like I'm still part of that generation that grew up film festival. I'm 28, but like the younger people coming up like 1920, they probably have a better understanding of how to get their stuff seen on YouTube and all that stuff. And I think of it as a bit at the business aspect as well. The more festivals you get into, that's more laurels you have. The more festivals you win, that's the more laurels you have. At this point, you're not just new independent feature film. You're independent feature film, official acceptance into 6
Mhm.
festivals, winner of these awards, and it creates more hype for you.
Definitely. And let's see. Another thing though, too, there's actually one more thing I want to actually catch on before we actually close out. Is this like I know with the editing as far as it goes and everything, everybody's thinking in movie trailers that the director has a say so in what goes into a trailer. That's actually not true at all. Unless you're like a Christopher Nolan that can actually say what goes and what doesn't go into a trailer.
This
Unless you're indie.
is Yeah, in indie, the director has a lot more pull. In Hollywood, it's all about the marketing producer and line producer. In the independent film, the director, like I know myself, I'm in the editing room all the time. Um, but so in independent, the director kind of blurs a lot of lines just because the unions and the guilds aren't as heavy as they are in Hollywood. In Hollywood, there's
Mhm.
like hard lines. Director does this, line producer does this, marketing producer does this. In independent film, it's almost like the line producer, the marketing manager, the executive producer, and the director all like talk about stuff and get it
Okay.
to be 100%. Which is why certain things like Terminator Dark Fate had their spoiler in there because the marketing manager didn't understand what the story was. If they would have just
Right.
communicated with the director, they would have known
Mhm.
exactly not to put John Connor being a Terminator in the first teaser trailer.
Right. Exactly.
um, but yeah,
And
that guy
then
probably doesn't have a job anymore.
I wouldn't
Um,
doubt it. And then also too, the music that they actually put in that trailer wasn't even that great either. Because I remember like
no,
it was like nothing to really be hyped up for. It was
it
like,
wasn't your
okay,
standard Terminator. Dun dun dun
no,
dun.
it was
It wasn't. It
no,
was just some weird stuff. They were like trying to do like that person was probably like really hard on Inception. It was like I really wanted it to be Inception. But yeah, the editing process is a weird thing to talk about because like the Hollywood process is completely different than the independent process. Um and it's a lot different in like the full industry, but the biggest difference is in the editing process because it's all about marketing for the trailer. The director's in there a lot for the final product, but for the trailer, because trailer is technically marketing, is advertisement and promotional material. So it would be the marketing director or manager, not the like actual director. Unless you're Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan can do whatever he wants, I guess.
right. Exactly. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. I do want to have you back on again for a second interview
I'd
or
love
just
it.
have you on as a guest. Seriously, this has been a great conversation. I really like the stories back and forth and everything. This has been really great. Um,
Uh,
go on.
I said absolutely. I'd love to. Like it's been a great time. I didn't even realize it had already been an hour. Um,
Right. It doesn't feel like it, to be honest with you. I just like it whenever it's just a free flow conversation, just back and forth, two people just talking about film. That's basically what I love about this concept.
oh, absolutely. That's exactly how it should be.
Exactly.
Before we sign off, just everybody, I have a Facebook group. for the upcoming feature film. Go join that. It's ParaGenex Shadow of the Mind. That's spelled ParaGenex, Shadow of the Mind. Just request to join. I'll accept you. That's where all the news for crowdfunding is going to be, all updating stuff. You can even go back. I have videos of me and the cast and crew just talking about the film itself. You'll learn a whole lot about it, a whole lot about each and every character, the wardrobe, the script, sound design, lighting, like the whole shebang. You'll learn probably as much as you will in the behind the scenes documentary as well.
Okay.
So go join that. Crowdfunding launches February 12th. So you'll be able to see the link for that on that page I just said, or my production company's page, R&R Film Productions LLC. We just changed the name recently. Yep, that's the new one. R Film Productions LLC.
All right. And everyone, you guys can actually go ahead and do this if you guys want to. I understand the pandemic has actually put everybody's pockets on hold right now. But if you guys want to, if you want to show some love for what I do and everything, go on ahead and go to the GoFundMe page below. Another thing, too, guys, is this. We're actually sponsored by Audible. So go on ahead and click on your 30-day trial and get you some books and everything. Read some books, read some sci-fi, some horror, whatever to your liking or whatever it is. Go ahead and click on that. Another thing, too, is if you guys want to follow me, go ahead and go to Movie Lovers Unite, TV Lovers Unite on Facebook, Movie Lovers TV Lovers Unite on Instagram. Follow me there. On Twitter, you can follow me on Movie Lovers Unit. And then, of course, you can follow me at John DeGorio8. For all your entertainment needs and pleasures, you can go to www.movieloversunite.com. And then Frenchie and I actually have a little show going together. It's called Neighbors Watching Trailers. And what does that do? I'm glad that you guys asked. What we do is we actually do trailer reactions to movies, and we actually do retro trailers. We do new trailers. We do Netflix trailers. We do anything trailers. As a matter of fact, speaking of trailers, Frenchie and I will be on speaker tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and then 6 o'clock Pacific Time to actually talk about movies versus trailers. Check us out on speaker. And also, too, if you guys also want to do this, follow me on Pinterest as well, because we actually have some stuff going on with Pinterest recently. So check me out over there at Movie Lovers TV Lovers Unite over there. And always, until next time, guys, it's been a blast. It's been fun. I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to do this again. And always, until next time, bye-bye.